Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for our main event! Hosted by Eric McMahon, it's Cageside with John Morgan!
And welcome everybody to another episode of Cageside with John Morgan. I am your host, Eric McMahon. Last week, we picked our all-time World Cup MMA teams. I proudly represented Team USA, the 205-pound division. My co-host, John Morgan, Brazil, anchored by probably the greatest pick I ever seen in Rickson Gracie. If you want to listen to that, go back. Check us out on our archives. You can find it on YouTube, grindcitymedia.com, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast. This week, we have a great show on hand. A guy who was there for what some are saying is one of the biggest upsets of all time. I don't think I'll go that far, but the man was in New York City for the first ever PFL pay-per-view. That man is John Morgan. How you doing, pal?
I'm good, man. I'm glad to be back from New York, but it was a fun trip. You know, actually, I had my family out there with it being Thanksgiving and all, so my wife and son were there. So I was kind of pulling double duty and that working during the day and then doing a little bit of sightseeing at night. But, man, ended up being a really fun event. As you said, the PFL's first pay-per-view and an incredible upset. I mean, maybe not one of the biggest of all time, but certainly the biggest in PFL history. You'll certainly say that. And one of the biggest in women's MMA history. I mean, it was a pretty amazing performance for Larissa Pacheco to be able to unseat the previously undefeated Kayla Harrison. But overall, just a fun event, man. It was the first PFL final I'd been to, and that Madison Square Garden crowd, you know, that New York crowd, they got a certain energy about them, and it was a fun night.
It looked like a fun night. I actually really didn't get to catch it live, so I was catching it through Twitter, which you can almost watch live if you watch things through Twitter. I actually had a Memphis Grizzlies game that night, so I wasn't able to watch it. And the reason I want to say I don't think it ranks up there with the biggest of upsets, because if you've watched Larissa Pacheco from her last loss to Kayla Harrison to now, one of the only people that Harrison hasn't finished, truth be told, if you had watched that progression, she was murking girls on her way back to the final to meet Kayla Harrison.
Yeah, it's a great point that you make. And it's one that, you know, I think a lot of us, the hardcores, were saying, hey, listen, this fight is more competitive than you think. Because as you said, they had fought twice before, but that was back in 2019. Both those fights went to a decision. Kayla won them both. And Kayla is a dominant force. And she was certainly the rightful favorite coming into this fight. But I think a lot of us, you know, the hardcores especially, were saying, hey, don't just write this fight off because you think you've seen it twice before. Larissa Pacheco has been growing. She's been getting better. As you said, she's 5 straight first-round knockouts to get herself back into the finals. And all along the way was always preparing for Kayla Harrison because you always knew that was the fight that was going to be there. And it's a unique situation that you're in. You know, when you're up at the top of that mountain, as you well know, I mean, every time you fight, you've got a huge target on your back. People are preparing for you, even, you know, when they're not ready to fight you because they know you're at the top of the division. And that's what's been happening here. And so I think you're right. I think you're making a good point. In terms of skill level, it's not one of the biggest upsets, but in terms of reputation and expectation and all those things, that's why, you know, the line was so skewed and why the odds were so stacked in Kayla Harrison's favor. I think even more so than they should have been, because this was always going to be a competitive fight, and it ended up being a razor-thin fight that Larissa Pacheco was just able to gut out. Fun, entertaining. It's one of those fights, you know, those are my favorite kind of fights, when they got those ebbs and flows and you know, it goes back and forth, and you're like, okay, Kayla won this round, but whoa, wait, Larissa just won that round. Okay, but wait, Kayla battled back. You know, it all came down to round 5. It was just one of those. It was a great fight. It was a great way to end the night for the PFL Finals.
And PFL Finals named a number of millionaires that night. What was that like in the building, seeing just $1 million checks being handed out? You get $1 million. You get $1 million. You get $1 million.
It's cool, man, because, you know, it's an opportunity to change these guys' lives. You know, I had a chance to see Brendan Loughnane the next day. We were actually watching a World Cup game while we were waiting to take a cab to get the flight home, and ran into. You could just sit in the emotion, man. It's just that opportunity. That's life-changing money. You know, does $1 million mean you'll never have to compete again? You'll never have to worry? No, it doesn't. But it does change your life. I mean, you think about the fact in one night, you know, you could pay off a house, get all your debts gone, you know, invest in some business. I mean, you can really change your life on one night. And to see that happen for 6 different fighters, it's pretty cool. It's neat to see, Eric, these unique opportunities for fighters. Look, the UFC is still the dominant brand in MMA. There's no question about it. It is by far the biggest, most popular brand in MMA. But now you're seeing opportunities like this with the PFL, with One Championship, with Bellator, of course, as well, where fighters can go to other places and they can still make a good living and they can still support themselves. And the more opportunities we have for fighters and athletes like this, I just think the better the sport gets as a whole, and the more, there's a chance for people to do this for a living.
The opportunities that come out of that type of money are, like you said, life-changing. One of the great things that I noticed about that event was the storytelling in it. You take a guy who his last fight in the UFC loses to Israel Adesanya, making his UFC debut. Where does he go? I don't know. How about the PFL? I then run off, I think it's 7 or 8 straight victories, and I become the Grand Prix champion or the tournament champion and win $1 million. What is a better story than that?
It's phenomenal. And we saw a couple of these, like I said, like Brendan Loughnane is another you mentioned that didn't really have, had brushes with the UFC, had a cup of coffee with one shot at it and it went away. Then was on Contender Series and got turned down. So he had that. The story you mentioned, of course, Rob Wilkinson, Olivier Aubin-Mercier, another one who didn't necessarily have the greatest UFC run, but then comes in here, puts it together, and gets 4 fights in a year and is able to bank $1 million. Sadibou Sy, a guy that has been around the PFL from the beginning and never won it, but was able to finally get over that hump and get it. And it is, the storytelling is cool. And like I said, when you've seen somebody kind of quote unquote wash out, I guess, somewhere else or not make it to the highest level somewhere else, and then they come here and they're able to reinvent themselves and get another opportunity, it is pretty cool to see. And the other thing you really heard about it, Eric, that I heard repeatedly being there on Fight Week and talking to these fighters is just how difficult it is to do this, right? Because there was one thing about the PFL that fighters really like, and that is the PFL has a schedule. Here's the date. Here's your weight class. That's the day it's going to be on. So you know exactly when you fight, which is a unique phenomenon because it's not like that in any other organization where, I'm fighting on that day. And at the beginning of the year, I know exactly what 4 dates I'm going to have to compete on. It's really cool because you're able to build your life around that. But the thing is, physically, 4 fights in a year, and it's not even a year because it starts a little later in the year. It's 4 fights in about 8 months. That's tough. It's tough on your body. And the other thing I heard about is mentally how taxing it is as well, because normally, you get a fight done, you win. Now you go home, you celebrate, maybe you have a couple frosty beverages, you take a week or 2 off, and then you start talking to matchmakers and figure out when your next fight is. But in this format, because you do know exactly when your next fight is, you never really get that chance to turn off. You get the win done, and it's like, okay, now I know in 8 weeks I've got this next fight lined up. And so they just talk about what a physically and mentally demanding thing it is. And maybe that played into a little bit with Kayla Harrison, of course, who was trying to do this for the 3rd consecutive year. That mental and physical taxation just became a little bit too much. But it's great, man. Like I said, it was really cool to see it. I think the PFL's in a good spot, and now they're expanding into Europe next year. They've got the Challenger Series where they're looking for prospects as well. I feel like they're in a good spot right now, and it just speaks to me about where the sport is. I feel like they're in a good spot right now. I feel like One Championship is in a good spot right now with doing the events live in prime time on Amazon Prime Video. So listen, UFC still the dominant brand in the game, but there's some other organizations that are making some solid strides forward, and I think that's just good for the sport as a whole.
I want to bring back a point that you made earlier in the schedule, and there's no time to rest on your laurels because you have another tournament match fight coming up in 2.5 short months. O'Malley was on the Joe Rogan podcast just last week, and he said something that I think hardcore competitors can understand. But if you take his mind frame, he couldn't be built for this PFL format. He said, I had a long training camp. 3 months, I knew I was fighting Peter Yan. And all that mattered was October 23rd. If you were going to ask me what I was going to do October 24th, I have no idea. It never even came into my head what I was doing the next day. October 23rd. And he's like, I'm a month out from that fight now, and I'm just now starting to recalibrate into thinking of everyday life. It has taken me that long to almost come down from it and readjust to normal life. There's no opportunity to do any of that in PFL. Boom, 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 boom. I mean, that's a crazy format to stay mentally focused, stay physically healthy for that long.
It really is. And it's something that Kayla Harrison had been speaking about over the last few years. And she actually said to me at the beginning of the season, she said, look, this is going to be my last season. You know, whatever happens, I just don't think I can continue to do it. And there's a number of reasons. She wants to focus on super fights and that sort of thing. But she talked about it. And she obviously, you know, back-to-back championships, she was able to speak openly about it. And I don't think people really put as much stock into it. You know, it's just like, well, come on, you're just saying that because you're dominating everybody and you want to make it seem like it's tougher than it really is. But you really heard people come out, everybody that had done it. And these are, you know, again, these are UFC veterans. These are guys that have been around the game for a while. And they said it the same thing. They're like, look, this PFL format, it's a blessing in many ways, but it's also a grind. And to get here to the end, it's tough. And, you know, there's no rescheduling. You know, you pick up a little injury in training, as we know all fighters do. I mean, nobody goes into a fight 100% healthy. There's no, hey, man, I think my knees tweaked a little bit, but if we pushed it back a month, I'd be okay. Like, nah, sorry, man. Like, this is the day we got the fight.
Yeah.
So you're either fighting or you're not. It's a challenge. It really is a mental and physical challenge. But to walk away with that $1 million check, man, to see people's lives change. You know, and I keep going back to Brendan Loughnane. I mean, all 6 of them were great, but I don't know. His journey's just been so unique because he's gotten close to the top and then pushed away. But it was pretty cool. You know, he had his mom in the cage and was like, hey, man, I remember, you know, you guys supporting me when we had nothing. And I said I was going to change our lives. And here I am. You know, I've got this $1 million. I'm going to change our lives. And I just don't see how you can't look at that. And as you said, the storytelling and the human emotion side of it, man, it's powerful. It's very cool to see.
Powerful, cool to see, great storytelling. Somebody, Kayla Harrison, eventually went. Checo, she did what she said she was going to do, which is awesome, especially against a judo multiple-time world champion, Olympic gold medalist, and undefeated MMA fighter, and she hadn't even been tested. But like you said, us hardcore, you know, nerds, this was a tougher fight. I was telling people, do not sleep on this. She is murking girls. But listen, we went through all that. Let's move on. The big dog, as you said, UFC 282, just a few short weeks away. Huge mix-up with the main event. Yuri out with what they're saying is a horrendous shoulder injury, needing surgery, gonna be on the shelf for up to a year. No main event. What happens? Glover says, or depending on who you talk to, is what story we're gonna get. How about you just set the stage? You're a better storyteller than I am.
Yeah, I mean, this was going to be the rematch, right? Glover Teixeira, that amazing title fight that he and Yuri Prochazka had last year. They were set to do that again. You hate to hear this for Yuri Prochazka because it really felt like he was coming into his own. I think, you know, a guy that had been lurking in the shadows for a long time and had put together this incredible record fighting overseas, came to the UFC, I think was really primed to kind of start getting that popularity because he's fun to watch fight. Now we hear he's going to be out for a year. Well, that leaves Glover Teixeira in for a title fight. And they said, Glover, hey, we need you to step up, and we got Jan Blachowicz, we got Magomed Ankalaev. We need to make a title fight here. You guys are going to be the main event. You're still going to fight for the title, but it needs to be one of those guys. And you're right. It seems to be there's a little bit of miscommunication. The UFC has come out and said that Glover just didn't want anything to do with that fight, either one of them. I don't know if that's exactly the case. Glover has said himself, he said, look, I'll take Jan Blachowicz. I've got history with him. I understand. I'll do that. If it's Magomed Ankalaev, he's a different cat to prepare for. I need some time. Let's push it back and go to Brazil. Well, the problem is, you know, this was the number one contender fight that was scheduled. It was kind of the backup main event already, right? And so if you lose your main event, you lose your backup main event. Now you got a year-end pay-per-view that you're struggling to find any way to sell. So the UFC said, nope, you know what we'll do? We'll just have these guys that are already here fight for the title. So Jan Blachowicz, Magomed Ankalaev, you're fighting for the undisputed UFC light heavyweight title. And so, you know, from the UFC perspective, you understand they got a pay-per-view. They got to put it together. They got a business. But it does feel a little bit like Glover Teixeira is the odd man out right now. And you kind of wonder what's going to happen with him. Because Glover had said, I need one more fight, and then I'm going to ride off into the sunset. So now what does he do? Does he just go ahead and ride off into the sunset anyway? Does he wait for the winner of this, assuming that Yuri won't be back in time to fight the winner of this, which would seem to make sense. So maybe around summertime. But this just changes the whole schedule, the whole timeline for Glover Teixeira. It really does. And it's a shame because it changes everything. And it's a shame because Glover is, you know, of course, one of the most beloved, respected figures in the sport. And you feel like he's kind of getting a raw deal here. But again, on the other side, you understand the UFC does have to protect, you know, their financial interests as well in putting on this pay-per-view event. So it's it seems like what the UFC had to do, but it doesn't feel very good at the end of it. You know what I mean?
Well, and before we got on the air, you made a good point. I said, because I read conflicting reports. Glover put out a statement, said he's willing to take you on. Just because that was more of the style he was already preparing to fight with Yuri. The UFC said no. He said no to both, only in Brazil. Yada, yada, yada. You just recap that. It really sucks for him, but it equally sucks as bad for us. I mean, Yuri and Glover took themselves into 5 rounds of hell for our enjoyment last time. And who was not looking forward to seeing that fight again? That was men willing to go to the brink. And Yuri catches Glover in a submission, wild scramble submission. Probably would never happen again in a scenario like that. Both guys hurt each other on the feet. Crazy. I was clamoring to see it again.
Everybody was. I mean, it was one of the craziest fights. It was one of those fights that, and I've heard people afterwards say, yeah, it was kind of a little sloppy, some of those sequences. Like, that's fun. You know what I mean? Like, of course you want technically sound fighting and the best execution of technique, but sometimes, what's one of the greatest fights of all? Stephen Bonner versus Forrest Griffin, one of the greatest fights of all time, right? And it's not necessarily technically beautiful at all times, but it's just two dudes going out there and throwing down and putting their all on the line, like you said. So, this is an unfortunate situation, and I'll just be interested to see where Glover Teixeira goes here. I imagine, Glover's a professional. He's been through the game. He understands. I'm sure he said he's a little frustrated. I understand why his feelings might get hurt. And sometimes, the communication gets a little messed up along the way when it goes through managers and third parties, and sometimes things aren't, communicated effectively and clearly. Hopefully everybody will get on the same page. Again, it's kind of one of those situations where you understand the UFC did what they had to do. Basically, they have to put something together. I mean, no disrespect, but if you lose that fight off the card, now you're talking about Paddy Pimblett versus Jared Gordon potentially as a pay-per-view main event. Well, I mean, come on, it's two popular fighters, especially the Paddy bandwagon is going up, skyrocketing. You can't headline a pay-per-view with that. So unfortunate situation all around. And I just hope that it doesn't mean that Glover Teixeira, doesn't get his final title shot before he, calls it a career.
Very unfortunate, and it's unlikely that he would fight in Brazil, because why would you take a fight in his position that's not a title fight, especially when you want that, swan song off into the distance, just with the legend intact, which he is a legend. I mean, the guy came in with so much hype, fanfare, hit some rocks around the way, and at his age, he's 44?
Yeah.
44, was the light heavyweight champion of the world and lost it in a fluke scramble in a fight that he was theoretically winning at the time. Razor thin, but winning at the time. Man, what a bummer. But everybody's a bummer. The one thing about this card, it's kind of been snake bitten now a little bit. OSP and Alexander Gustafsson was like the sleeper fight of the night. And now Gustafsson's out, was followed up with another replacement. That's out. OSP's on his 3rd replacement fighter at this point.
It's crazy, man. It's wild when things change like that. It's the unfortunate reality of the sport. It's kind of funny because we were just talking about the PFL and how you don't get the withdrawal because you lose your opportunity with the UFC, and it's the nature of it, man. I said the training that these guys go through is insane. I mean, you talk to anybody that does it, that's where the injuries occur, not in the fights. It's in these grinding training camps that they have to put in. But from a fan perspective, the one thing that I always try to tell fans, and I hate to say it, but it's true, is like, if you're thinking about buying tickets to an event or going to an event, make sure it's not for one fighter. Like, if it's just like your favorite fighters on there, so you have to be there, there's no guarantee your favorite fighter is going to be on the card by the time that day rolls around. And I hate to be negative like that, but yeah. I just like to be realistic with fans. Like, when you decide you're going, make sure you're going because you just want to be at the event and that you're willing to look at the whole card. Because if you're going for one guy, man, you never know what can happen. It's just because these athletes, man, they put themselves through so much in training camp to get themselves ready for competing at the highest level that, man, these bumps and nicks and injuries, man, they pop up all the time. So, still a good card, though. I mean, for a year-end pay-per-view, still good. Like I said, Paddy Pimblett on there, the rising star in there. I mean, the return of Robbie Lawler and Santiago Ponzinibbio, that should be. Darren Till's coming back, which is crazy. He hasn't fought in forever against Dricus Du Plessis, so still a good-looking lineup.
He's on the Is that the fight that's going to be bumped to the main card now?
I think so. I believe that's what the lineup is set. And how about
Darren
Bryce
Till
Mitchell
on an undercard?
Come on, man. It's crazy, man. But so it's still a good lineup. But again, you lost some big ones up at the top, that's for sure. How about Bryce Mitchell, Ilia Topuria? Like, my goodness, hardcore grappling fans like us, bro. I can't wait for that fight.
I'm a huge Thug Nasty fan. He's been a little controversial. I ain't going to get into the weeds about that, but I've seen that kid's rise being here, a Memphis guy. He's from right across the river in Arkansas. I reffed a number of his amateur fights. I've reffed a number of his regional pro fights. That kid is the truth, and anybody who says differently is a liar. I am anxious to see that fight.
Yeah, he's phenomenal. He's a lot of fun to watch. As you said, some of his political views might be a little bit out there, but I've enjoyed seeing his rise. Well, I was first exposed to him when he fought on the World Series of Fighting card on the undercard, and got a chance to see him there.
Yes, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I was incredibly impressed with his skills, and he's got that thick country accent, and Joey Varner actually asked him, like, why do they call you Thug Nasty? And I'll never forget. He's like, y'all see me in the cage, but you ain't seen me in the streets. And I was just like, who is this character? But he's got the skills to go with it. It's one thing to just have a personality or something, and that's part of it. I mean, this is entertainment. So having a personality, having a story, that's all important. But at the end of the day, you got to win fights too. And this kid has all that. So, but on the other side, Ilia Topuria is an absolute monster as well. So I love that fight. That's one for the hardcores coming up.
Bryce Mitchell outstruck Edson Barbosa. Think about that.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Think about that.
Crazy, man.
Well, hey, over the course of this weekend, you got to sit down in an underground, that your website that you're editor-in-chief of, and a Grind City Media exclusive. You got to sit down with probably the biggest known personality MMA manager in the game. Set it up for us. We're about to run this interview, so set it up. It's awesome. I can't wait to everybody to hear it.
Yeah, this is Ali Abdelaziz. He's the head of Dominance MMA, which is one of the most powerful, organizations, you would say, in the sport in terms of MMA management. And the guy's roster is massive, and it's filled with superstars as well. So anytime you get a chance to talk to him, it's interesting because there's a lot going on with the number of athletes he represents in terms of what's coming up, what just happened, what kind of deals are you putting together right now? He was the longtime manager of Frankie Edgar, who just retired. He's got, Henry Cejudo coming up, Triple C coming back. He's just got a lot of these things and a lot of irons in the fire, I should say. So it's always good to catch up with Ali Abdelaziz, and he's an open book, man. He'll lay it out there, and also got to see a little bit of an emotional side as well as he talked about Anthony Johnson. So powerful stuff there for people that listen. Ali Abdelaziz catches his share of criticism, but I think when you see this, you'll understand the passion he has for his athletes is 100% real.
Awesome. Let's go ahead and take a listen to this interview.
All right, it is Dominance MMA head Ali Abdelaziz, who is always a busy man. So I appreciate you taking a few minutes, Ali. And I guess before we talk about what's going on and what's coming up, let's talk about what just happened. Bellator 288, kind of a bittersweet weekend, right? I mean, Corey Anderson, unfortunately, didn't get it done. Usman Nurmagomedov did get it done in incredible fashion. So I guess first, just give me your thoughts on the event and, how it was kind of tough. One loss, one win.
I had 5 guys competing on this event, and 4-1, and Corey lost, and I was, I didn't even see Usman after the fight. I kind of stayed with Corey all night in the back and stuff, and it was really heartbreaking because if anybody deserves anything, it's Corey Anderson. I think this man, he worked so hard. He's been through a lot, and it's just, I'm happy for all the guys who won, Usman, and again, my first Bellator title. I never have a Bellator title before, and there's a history for all of us, Khabib as a coach and myself. Everybody was really happy, but life go on, and Corey will be a champion. I have no doubt in my mind. The man always bounced back.
Yeah, it was definitely kind of heartbroken for Corey. But on the flip side as well, Usman, man, I don't know if anybody's going to beat this guy anytime soon. He looked incredible and just 24 years old. What do you think the future holds for him? What are his goals? Where does he want to go? Because he looks incredible.
I don't think Usman, he reached 30% of his potential yet, to be honest with you. He just recently, started getting pushed by Khabib. He always trained with Khabib, but Khabib actually pay attention to him. And he's just improving. Even the weight cut was easy. The fight, he make it look easy against a really tough opponent. The Pitbull brother always bring it. I don't think he was touched in this fight. He wasn't touched. He did everything he really did. He showed variety of technique, kicks, striking, wrestling, and show like the Nurmagomedov that just can't wrestle. That can do it all.
Yeah. He's going to enter this Grand Prix next year, right? Is he going to defend his belt all the way through the Grand Prix?
He's the Bellator champion. He does whatever Scott Coker or Mike Coker want him to do. He's a Bellator employee, and Bellator been so amazing to all the guys. Given they're signing a lot of guys who's nobody even know about, like Rizwan Khizrif, who just beat Wichel. So many guys who they are signing. They're gonna be champion or fighting for the title very soon. Bellator roster right now is very strong.
Yeah. Last thing I want to ask you about that, I think it was ESPN MMA that put out the graphic. Team Habib, the record is like 142 wins, 11 losses, 3 draws. I mean, incredible. What do you think the key is, man? I mean, is Habib this amazing of a coach? Is it the continuation of, father's plan? What is the key to the success?
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you what is the key is. I get calls from these guys. I don't want to mention names. Can you please talk with Habib? We're tired. He doesn't give us a break. We hurt him. The man is just he's a man on a mission. Everybody cannot beat Habib, but they're gonna be very close. The man he was. It's gonna be hard, and if you do not gonna do the work, you're not gonna be part of this anymore. You know what I'm saying? And it's a blood in, blood out. There's no such a thing. You can 60%, 70%. He give you 100% because he's doing it for nothing. He's not getting any rewards. He's not getting paid. He's just doing it for just out of love, right? And if you're not gonna give him 100%, he's gonna smash you, or you gotta go somewhere else.
You talk about somebody nobody will ever say anything bad about. How about Frankie Edgar? Calling it a career. I know this was an emotional night for you and an important one, but let me just ask you about Frankie, and his future and kind of his involvement with the sport. I mean, do you think he's truly done, or maybe he comes back at some point like we see at MMA? And what do you see in his role in the sport moving forward? I mean, obviously a Hall of Famer for sure, but do you see him sticking around MMA, or does he just want to go off in the sunset and spend time with his family? Like, what do you see for Frankie Edgar?
Listen, I've been trying to get Frank to retire for 2 years. He have plenty of money. He's comfortable, but he just like to fight, man. And we have a deal, me and him, that was done. And win or lose, he was done. The man have given us great moments. He gave us joy. I will not be talking to you today if it wasn't Frankie. Frankie have done so much for me and for my family. He put me on the map. He took a chance with me. I was nobody, and I'm still nobody. But he took a chance and let me become his manager, and he was the UFC lightweight champion. The man, his legend is gonna talked about for years. He was a champ at 55, but he was a 35-pounder fighting guys who's 190 and 180 fight night. He's a great human being. He's a great guy. I told him I'll step in as the CEO of Dominance MMA, and I'll take a different role. He can be my boss any day of the week. I mean it. The man has so much knowledge, integrity, and love, and I think he can give. He want to stay back. He want to be involved, and I'll make sure he'll stay back around the sport.
That's awesome, man. Absolute legend, man. It's been an honor to watch his career. All right, somebody that's starting to get legend status, Islam Makhachev, really starting to get respect that he didn't have for a long time. Now we know the first defense of his belt is going to be against a featherweight in Alexander Volkanovski, 2 top pound-for-pound fighters. But I guess what got you excited? Because it was clear Islam, after he won over Charles Oliveira, he was excited for Alexander Volkanovski. So what is it that you guys see in this fight that you think, yeah, that's the matchup we all want to see put together?
I think the UFC made a mistake by making this fight, because I think should have been Beneil Dariush, and I truly mean it. Beneil would have met with Dana and stuff, but I think I'll respect Alexander Volkanovski. Actually, I saw him at the fight and I shake his hand. I think it's a mistake to fight Islam Makhachev right now. I think it's a mistake. The only man can give him a fight is Beneil. At the moment, who is the top contenders? I just don't think it's a competitive fight. I think Islam, I've been telling you guys about this for years. Everybody think I was crazy. They call him the Chinese Khabib. I told you maybe he is better. You know, Khabib is one of a, can't compare anyone to Khabib, to be honest with you. Islam is the real deal. Islam, I can see him become a 3 division champion. I really do. You told me Islam Makhachev, he cannot be Leon Edward right now. He can. You told me Islam Makhachev can please Alex Pereira. No, he can. Islam Makhachev can be 3 division champion. I see him in the gym. He smashed people, light, heavyweight. He's a one of a kind. The man is unstoppable. I think his only tough fight in the division is Benil Darush, and I really see how good Benil looked his last fight. I love Alexander. I think he's one who said if you choose one to just be around all day and to help him, I will Alex, because he's such an important figure in the sport and he's such a class act. But the only problem he has is fighting Islam Makhachev. This is the only problem he has in his life. But in a way, he I don't think he's going to ruin his legacy, because the legacy of Islam Makhachev is going to be so big, people are going to understand. But he's if he loses his belt, he's going to go back and still defend his 145 division. But I'm telling you something, them boys going to go to Australia and they're going to make a big statement. And one of the things I don't say, how Kamaru Usman become the number 4 or 5th pound for pound fighter? You understand? Like, I just saw that. You understand? How? It's crazy. It's crazy.
You gotta let him get some title defenses in there, and obviously this will be a big one.
Kamaru, he number 4. I think Kamaru should be number 2. Even ahead of Islam. To be honest with you, the man lost second in the whole fight. Outside the first round, he was dominant, like in syrup or tequila or something, because they drunk. Because Kamaru Usman is the greatest fighter in the UFC today. I think he's the greatest fighter in the UFC today. He has so many defenses, he has so many great fights, but it is what it is. I just gotta get this off my chest. Yeah, Islam is. He will stop Alexander under 3 respectfully. He will stop Alexander under 3 rounds. I believe though, and it's gonna be amazing. It's gonna be amazing, and I can't wait for my boy Triple C to come back. Triple C. I like Aljo. I consider Aljo as a friend. Aljo is fighting Henry Cejudo. It's done. It's done. It's just that the UFC said it's done. He knows it's done. I understand he wants a different fight, but the man never lost his belt. He's a 2-time champion, defended both belts, and he left on his own. He didn't leave because he lost or injured. He just needed time off. And guess what? I think he will defend this title. It's a champion versus champion, because he never lost the belt. And I disagree with Aljamain. I think it's a big fight. It's a tougher fight. He know that. I know that. And I don't think Aljamain shy from an opponent. I think he tried to make Henry sweat, but I already know what's up. He's fighting Henry.
Wow. All right. Well, listen, I know you got a lot of interviews, Ali. We didn't even get to talk about, I think it should be Beneil versus Charles Oliveira if he's not fighting for the title. I got to figure out where Bilal Muhammad is, man. He deserves a big fight after that last one. But I know you got to do other interviews, but I want to ask you one more thing. And I hate to end it on a sad note, but I did want to ask you about Anthony Johnson, man. I mean, this was it's just wild because, he made the decision to keep so much of this private. And I don't think any of us really knew how serious everything was. We kept asking you, when is he going to fight again? When do we get to see him again? And you and Scott Coker kind of telling us like, hey, don't worry about that. Like, just worry about everything's okay. And I don't think any of us really knew how serious this was. But I guess, can you just talk to me about, the passing of Anthony Johnson and how difficult this has been for you guys to know that this battle was happening behind the scenes over these past few years?
Sorry. Yesterday was we buried him. I was in Georgia. We buried him, and Anthony, man, was a really special guy, man. Everybody loved Anthony. He took care of everybody. He was nice to everybody. Yesterday it was. I slept off today because I didn't sleep for the last 2.5 because I knew I was going to the funeral, and I was very scared. I never been to a funeral in the U.S. And I went there, and his casket was there, and his family was there. They made it very short, small. And Anthony, man, was suffering, man. Was suffering for the last 1.5 years, and now I talk to people, and I talk to people, and he was telling me, like, I wouldn't a few people know what's going on with him, dialysis, kidneys, stuff like that, but he been having a cancer for 1.5 years, and I think he fought with a cancer. I think he really did, I think because now the timing, I think he had cancer when he fought, and I want to thank really Bellator, man, and Scott Coker and Mike Hogan. They went and got him a medical insurance about 1 year ago because he didn't have a medical insurance, and even like some of his sponsors, like Monster, right? Like this guy Hound, everybody killed every fucking day. His deal was done, His deal was done, and he renewed his deal to help him, Like, and people really cared about Anthony, like like Mike Hogan would see him all the time and visiting him. And I'll be honest, man, the UFC guys too. Dana was asking him all the time, Hunter, and a lot of, everybody loved Hunter, and he loved everybody, he loved everybody, and people really stuck by Anthony, man, and rest in peace, rest in peace. And that's about it, man. It was rough, very rough, and Anthony was a very special guy, very special human being, and you found one person who didn't like Anthony Johnson. He's like same as like Frankie Edgar and these guys, He was a gentle giant. He was one of the most terrified person on this planet, but he was working saving dogs and kennels and all this kind of, so many people come to me at the funeral and say, thank you, Anthony really loved you, and it meant so much to me. It meant so much to me because it was hard, man. It was hard. Anthony was a really good guy, man.
Absolutely. Ali, I appreciate you sharing that, man. I can see the emotions, and I know how tough it was for everybody around him. So I appreciate you sharing that.
And that was an amazing interview led by our guy whose name is on the marquee, John Morgan. Now, a lot of stuff to take out of that. I can have a personal story about Ali a little bit later. But the big news that I want to take out of it, it sounds like it's done. Signed, sealed, delivered. Aljo, Triple C, main event. Triple C is coming back. Aljo said he wasn't going to fight him not till June, July, August, September, whenever the hell he wanted to. It's done?
It sounds like it's done. I mean, listen, I posted a little clip of that to my Instagram as well, and Aljamain actually commented on it. It was like, hey, I told you I don't turn down fights. I'll fight anybody. Those guys were both at the PFL, and they actually had kind of a little friendly face-off. Yeah, they did. So it sounds like it's done. To be honest with you, I was a little bit surprised, man. I was a little bit surprised. I thought, the momentum that Sean O'Malley had, that the UFC would want to kind of really build on that. And they didn't always seem high on Henry Cejudo. And I think they were a little frustrated at the way he kind of walked away when he was at the top of the game. And I think that kind of upset them. But, kind of what Ali says is right. Like he was never beaten as the champion. And he, I do think this is a big fight. And I think it will be. I think Aljamain, there's always a little bit of posturing involved, right? Where, a fight's about to happen. You say, maybe I'll have that fight. Maybe I won't. But now that it looks like you said, everybody here says it's done. Everybody says it's happening. So I guess, we'll just wait on a date to find out, when it'll all come together.
We always talk about, or we have talked about, but a lot of people talk about how cringe Triple C Henry Cejudo really is. I'm going to be honest. Now, I'm from Arizona. I'm an Arizona boy. I'm a huge Triple C fan. He's from Arizona. Wrestled his high school career out there before he went on into Olympic gold. I am a bigger fan of his, and his stock has risen post his first retirement. Am I wrong there?
No, I would agree with you. The cringe factor is funny, but you got to remember with Henry Cejudo is that he knows it. I mean, he's playing into, he's had interviews where he's like, do you know what kind of balls it takes for me to come out here with like stuffed pillows and snakes and rabbits out of a magic hat? I mean, he's like, do you know what kind of stones I got to have to be willing to go out there and do that? But he wants to put on a show, man. And he understands that this is a huge part about mixed martial arts. Yes, it's about wins and losses, but it is about marketing as well. It's about having a personality. It's about making people care. And it doesn't matter if people love you or hate you, right? I mean, Floyd Mayweather made a whole lot of money of people buying pay-per-views that were hoping they were buying the night that he got his ass kicked and they got to watch it. You know what I mean? Because they didn't like the guy. But it doesn't matter. You still spent your money. And so, but to your point, I do, Cejudo has stayed out there. He's doing YouTube stuff and staying in the media and giving analysis and giving thoughts and making himself very relevant. And so I think his stock has gone up, and I think it's going to be a great fight. And it sounds like, Aljamain, while he had initially said, I'd probably prefer to fight Sean O'Malley, I think, he understands, look, this is a big fight. And if marketed properly, it certainly can be that.
Triple C, Henry Cejudo, really reminds me, in a weird way, you got to hear me out on this before you just shoot it down. He kind of reminds me of a Dominic Cruz to a degree. All right. And from the standpoint of, when you watch his analysis, I think Dominic Cruz is the best analytically breaking down a fight in the moment. He stepped left, this guy stepped right, he threw the over. If you watch, to your point, he's on YouTube, he's doing all these things. His analytical breakdown of things is next level.
Yeah, it is. You're absolutely right about that. And even, you hear about the people that have come out to Fight Ready and are working with him out there in Arizona, and they'll tell you, man, it's the mind of Henry Cejudo, the things that he's able to teach you, the things that he's able to observe and to communicate. It really is a game changer. So, no, the guy is an incredibly sharp mind, in addition to just being a phenomenal athlete. I mean, obviously an Olympic wrestling champion, certainly, that takes a certain level of skill and a certain level of mindset and commitment and dedication. But even outside of the game, not just his wrestling, it's not just he could come in and teach you how to wrestle. It's everything. The guy is a phenomenal mind. And so it's a strong comparison. It really is. As different as they are in terms of personality, Henry Cejudo and Dominic Cruz, from that aspect of it, you're spot on, man. They're incredibly sharp analytical minds.
So I got to ask this one question, put you on the spot. You said the UFC wasn't really high on Henry Cejudo. It kind of got forced together a little bit. He did go out on top. Rumor has it he wanted more money. They weren't going to give it, so he kind of took his ball and went home. Who knows? But that's probably the reason. Easier fight, or let's say a better fight, not an easier fight. That's not fair. Easier fight for Aljo. O'Malley or Cejudo?
Man,
easier fight is O'Malley all day long.
Yeah, I mean, styles make fights. I think you're right about. I mean, the thing about Sean O'Malley is that obviously he's got incredible striking, right? He's got incredible speed. He's got wild movement. All those things, unpredictability. He's going to play some mind games with you coming in. Look, Sean O'Malley is a dangerous competitor, but there's a reason that Henry Cejudo was able to claim those championships and walk away on top. And that is because he's, stylistically, as you said, styles make fights, man. And stylistically, I think Henry Cejudo is probably a tougher matchup for Aljamain Sterling, because he's somebody that is going to be able to deal with the grappling, that, is going to be able to address the dangerous jiu-jitsu and wrestling that Aljamain Sterling has. So, obviously Sean O'Malley, I think, is a more dynamic striker, a better striker. Obviously he's got, more range, so he presents different options or different challenges, I should say, there, because you got to deal with his length, you got to deal with his speed, you got to deal with his kind of unpredictability. But when you think about Aljamain Sterling's strengths, it's to be able to out-grapple you, right? He's the human Jansport, the human anaconda, the human backpack. Henry Cejudo can deal with all those things. He can peel you away, and he can make sure he doesn't get in those positions. So I think it's absolutely a more challenging matchup, I would say.
Time frame. When are we looking at this? Do you have any idea?
I don't. Again, Aljamain had originally said summertime, but even he kind of said, but who knows? I'll probably get the itch back a little bit sooner. So, I think we'll probably see it before summertime, if I'm being honest, maybe April, May, somewhere around there. But, the UFC's got to get the schedule all lined up. And the whole thing is, especially with title fights, right? I mean, first of all, it's going to be on a pay-per-view. So you've only got certain dates, but then it's, who's available when. And, it sounds like, Francis Ngannou may be back in March. So do you really want to put it there in March? Do you need it as a co-main event? Do you put it somewhere else? So it all boils down to kind of where everybody's at. But I bet we see it before summer if I'm just guessing.
Can that headline a pay-per-view card?
I don't think so.
Typically 35ers don't headline.
Agreed. I don't think so. And I mean, not that I don't think it could, but it's just some of those bigger weight divisions have the bigger names and the bigger star power. And I think it would probably be best served as a co-main event on a pay-per-view. I think it's a solid.
Imagine John Jones, Francis Ngannou headlined with the co-main Henry Cejudo and Aljamain Sterling. Take my money.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And see that, and I think that's what the UFC has to do. Like the Sterling Cejudo match is going to be the fight that speaks to the hardcores, right? The people that know, but that's not necessarily the one that's, you talk about Jones and Ngannou. Now listen, if Jones and Ngannou does get done for March, they might not need a title fight in a co-main event. Like that fight is so big that it sells on its own. But that has been kind of the trend lately, is put 2 title fights on there. Number one, and it does 2 things. Number one, when you have 2 title fights, it's just a little bit extra to sell, right? There's more storylines, there's more interviews, there's more everything that can be done. And the other thing is, if you lose your main event, knock on wood that doesn't happen, you still have a title fight that can be elevated into the main event slot. So that's why they like to put 2 title fights on there when they can. But boy, Ngannou and Jones, I mean, come on. That's one of those ones that, like, don't even tell me what else is on the card. I don't care. I don't need to know because I'm already handing you my money. That is an incredible matchup.
Well, UFC, just give us the arena schedule for 2023. Me and John Morgan are booking it for you. We're fantasy booking it. You don't even have to pay us that much. So, but going on to another UFC show this coming weekend. This may be one of the best fight nights I've seen in a long time. This Saturday, UFC Fight Night, headline, Stephen Thompson versus I guess he's not retiring, Kevin Holland.
Yeah, come on, man. You knew he was coming back. Kevin Holland can't stay away from this game, but,
he was away from the game for what, 3 weeks?
About 3 weeks, and he's already back. You knew he wasn't done, but I think he was excited. He got a big check. I heard he got quite a bit of money to step in there against Hamzat last time. They sweetened the pot for him behind the scenes, so...
Really quick, when Joe Rogan at the interview goes, "Is this a better fight for you?" and he goes, "Hell no."
I like it. That was great. He's like, "No, this matchup sucks for me, but I'm taking it," and they paid for it. So yeah, Wonder Boy and Kevin Holland, a big fight in the division, a big fight for Wonder Boy, to be honest with you, man, to kind of prove that he still belongs there. Kind of at the, one of the more beloved figures of all time in the division, but kind of at the tail end of his career, and needs to prove that he still belongs in that ranking. Still very high up there at number 6 right now, but is coming off a couple losses where he's been out wrestled. I don't think Kevin Holland will try to out wrestle him, but it wouldn't be a bad play. So great main event. But as you said, just top to bottom as you
go down the main card for me. I'll go bottom opening up the main card. Your boy Eric Anders, right? Next fight, Derek Brunson, Jack Hermanson, followed by Tai Tuivasa, Sergey Pavlovich. Matthias Nicola versus Matt Schnell, the guy who is like flown under the radar, who I'm a big fan of, Matt Schnell. Brian Barberina, Rafael Dos Anjos, and then the main event we're just talking about. What a fight night.
I think it's going to be incredibly entertaining. Worth noting, Derek Brunson is out. He's been replaced by Roman Dolidze, so that was a late change that was just made this past weekend, but still, phenomenal lineup. And honestly, I think Roman Dolidze is somebody to pay attention to that division, so I won't say that I necessarily more intrigued, because obviously anytime Derek Brunson fights, you want to watch him compete, but I like this matchup a lot. So as you said, a lot of ranked competitors, a lot of just entertaining guys. That Matheus Nicolau Matt Schnell fight could be insane. Barberina RDA could be insane. So it's that blend of both. These fights have meaning because there's rankings and it's people going up or down in the division, but B, just the styles of the fights look like they're going to be incredible as well. So I think this is going to be a fun one. And look, it's not overlapping. I mean, even on the prelims, you got guys like Nico Price on the prelims, Clay Guidas on the prelims, Marty Casey versus Michael Johnson on the prelims. I mean, Tracy Cortez, Amanda Hebes. I mean, that's all in the prelims. So yeah, man, this card is stacked. I think it's going to be a very, very entertaining night of fights. And I love it because it's a weekend where, look, we've got dual one championship events, but it's Friday night and Saturday morning, and then you got the UFC on Saturday night. So I love it when it's laid out like that, where I don't have to have like 4 different TVs going at the same time. You can really focus your attention on one event at a time. And, one championship's got a stacked lineup. UFC's got a stacked lineup. We got some good MMA set up for this weekend.
listen, when you put this free on ESPN, I'm here for it. Usually, even if it's a shitty card, I'm here for it, right? If it's
It's
just
true.
two people fighting each other, I'm going to watch it. But when you put a stacked fight night like this on free television, well, not free. You got to, have cable, but still, I mean, come on, dude. The UFC is doing shit right these days.
I mean, it is funny, like you say. Well, it's not free. You got like, who doesn't have ESPN? Like, come on, man. Like, you got ESPN, and you better have ESPN Plus. I mean, it's a heck of a deal. There's so much stuff on there, but this one's on big ESPN. So even if you're not the one that says, well, I don't know about that ESPN Plus, that's a little too much for me. You gotta have ESPN, right? Everybody's got ESPN. So yeah, this is a great weekend, man. And this fight card, like I said, top to bottom, looks like it should be very entertaining. I think we're gonna be talking about some fun fights afterwards, some statements made in terms of rankings, but more than anything, just I think we're gonna be looking at some entertainment where we say that was just a fun card.
What's the most intriguing fight to you on this card? I know in my head what's the most intriguing. I want to see if we're vibing here.
I mean, look, the main event is very intriguing to me because I think we're going to see whether Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is still relevant in that division when he gets a matchup like Kevin Holland. He's been sitting there for a long time, and there's a lot of people that have been kind of frustrated in the welterweight rankings that say, hey, man, why is that guy still up there in that position? And, he's not willing to take certain matchups. So that one's intriguing to me for that reason. But outside of that, I mean, Nikolai and Schnell. Look, I'm partial to the flyweights, man. I love the flyweight division. I feel like it's some of the most entertaining matchups in the sport happen at 125 pounds, and those two dudes are absolute studs and could be very, very exciting. But I mean, Tai Tuivasa is on the card. When Tai Tuivasa is on the card, how you not tuning in for a potential shoey? You know what I mean?
I'm going to tell you which one just intrigues me from, again, the MMA nerds that we are, is that Brian Barberena versus Rafael dos Anjos. I mean, this is, it's going to sound crass when it comes across, but I mean it with just affection. We're going to see if Brian Barberena is contender or pretender here. That's what we're going to get out of this fight. We know who Dos Anjos is. We know he is in contention and will always be in contention. But you see Barberena, the guy who just doesn't stop coming forward, trying to take your head off.
Yeah.
Fun fight for me.
Well, it's a fun fight. And it is, and again, it's exactly what I said, because you just outlined the stakes, right? There's statements to be made. But regardless of that, you just know those two guys in the cage together is going to be all action, high octane from start to finish. So again, that's going to be fun, but also, as you said, there's real statements to be made about where, which direction you go with your career. So that's an intriguing one too. But the fact that, we could outline that many that could be what, is most intriguing, that just goes to show this UFC did well on this one. I think Orlando got themselves a good card this weekend.
Heck yeah. Are you going to be there?
I'm not. November was so crazy. I'm excited to stay home for a little bit.
Your wife's like, hell no, you're not going, Mr. Morgan.
Yeah, it was nuts, man. I had that crazy schedule for a couple weeks, so decided to sit this one out. I'll watch this one on TV, and then, of course, the following week, UFC 282 will be right here in my hometown of Las Vegas. Then we go on to CFFC out in Atlantic City the following week. We got some fun stuff lined up, but I'm gonna sit this one off and watch this one on TV just like everybody else.
We're wrapping up here on Cageside with John Morgan. Fun episode. We outlined PFL, the huge upset, shifting in the main event. Awesome breaking news. You heard it. I'm not going to say first because we heard it on your Twitter first with the clips, but you heard it here. Grind City Media with Triple C and Aljamain Sterling confirmed, even though the UFC has not confirmed it yet. And then just a fun night of fights coming up. Anything news and noteworthy you want to share with us before we get going?
Like I said, just keep an eye on One Championship as well, man. They've got another event, a quick turnaround for them. So on Friday night, prime time, if you're around, they've got another great card that's going to be on Amazon Prime Video. Rainer DeRitter, the light heavyweight world title, is on the line there. Cade Ruotolo is back. I mean, the brothers, both of them are actually on the card, but Cade is defending his title. Obviously, what he did at ACC is incredible. Roberto Soldic is there as well, making his debut, the former KSW champ. So they've actually got a pretty loaded card there as well. Over at One Championship, and then they'll come back and do the one early on Saturday morning. But I know a lot of people aren't waking up at like 5:30 Eastern to watch some MMA, so I'll forgive you if you're not that hardcore. They're not getting it for that, but at least Friday night, check it out on Amazon Prime Video because those cards have been fun. So like I said, we've got that, and we got a great UFC card on Saturday. So I think it's gonna be a good weekend of fights.
The great thing about having this podcast now is when I want to watch UFC or MMA, any of them, and my wife's like, "Hey, we got to do this, we got to do that." I just gotta say, "Babe, I'm working."
That's it. Like, hey, what do you want me to do? It's my job. I'm sorry, I gotta watch this stuff. I can't go wherever you want to go right now. This is my job.
No, I can't go to your mom's house. I can't go to I want to go to the in-laws' house, but I have to work. It's what I sacrifice for this family.
Do you know how hard it is for me to have to sit here and watch fights instead of going over to your mom's house right now? It's painful, but we got to do this somehow. These are the sacrifices I make for us, honey. This is for us.
Oh, hey, you know what I'm speaking, but hey, this is a fun episode, and everybody enjoy the fights. You can follow John Morgan on Twitter, JohnMorgan_MMA. I'm not sure about your Instagram handle, but just type in John Morgan. You'll find him. He's got like a blue shirt on there. Okay?
Look for the blue shirt. You'll find it.
There you go. You can find me on Twitter, E_MacLife. Same thing, Instagram, EricMCM80 on the Instagram. For John Morgan, I'm Eric McMahon. Tune in next week when we will recap all of this. Enjoy the fights, everybody.